Today on the official Marvel podcast, we're talking spoilers with Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps director Matt Shakman and the film's stars Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, Ebon Moss-Bachrach, Paul Walter Hauser, Ralph Ineson, and Julia Garner.
There's a lot of suppressed emotion that the Silver Surfer has been going through forever, in a way.
And we'll hear from Marvel Animation's Eyes of Wakanda showrunner Todd Harris on what viewers can expect from the exciting new series.
Another aspect of the show is to show how interconnected the world was, even in ancient history.
I'm Sade Spence.
I'm Victoria Ying.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps is in theaters now. And Sade, how obsessed were you with the gorgeous retrofuturistic backdrop of 1960s New York in the film?
Oh my gosh, Victoria, almost as obsessed as I was with the Thing's rocky beard and his lovable grumpiness. And I live in New York right now, and what I wouldn't give to walk around in that version of New York City.
Same. Listeners, if you haven't seen the film yet, get to the movies. We're about to get into some spoilers, so hit that spoiler alarm.
Okay, now that you've seen the Fantastic Four First Steps, or even if you haven't, have you wondered why First Steps is in the title? Actor Pedro Pascal, who plays Reed Richards, shares his thoughts.
First Steps as a subtitle means so many things. I can't help but personalize what my experience was on this movie because it's very first steps for me. It's first steps, stepping into a character and family like this in this sort of unified excitement and terror and stepping into the Marvel universe together as a family and taking those first steps together. And of course, first steps, into exploring other universes. And then, of course, first steps into becoming parents. So I think it's its own unique sort of origins story because it's an origin story about becoming parents and expanding the family and interrupting a functioning unit and originating all of those kinds of dynamics by bringing a new member into the family with Franklin. So that to me is kind of an origin story.
Reed Richards and Sue Storm's relationship plays a pivotal role in the film. Director Matt Shakman explains why their dynamic is so important.
It's a family and it's a marriage. And that's really important, making sure that this felt like a real marriage, a marriage where opposites attract, where you can complete each other. But oftentimes when you have a child and you have one common project, those differences suddenly really feel like differences. And when you're raising another human, that's where you have to navigate all of those complexities. And that's what a real marriage feels like. And so for us, things culminate in a scene in the movie where they're fighting, in a way that Marvel characters don't fight, in a way that a real married couple does, which is arguing over this idea of I know who you are and what you are and the way that you are, but sometimes you being you hurts me, and trying to find common ground and figure out how to move forward.
The Fantastic Four First Steps introduces viewers to Sue and Reed's child, Franklin. Vanessa Kirby, who plays Sue Storm, describes how his birth raises the stakes exponentially.
The origin story is so interesting, and it would be so interesting to see these characters go through something quite traumatic and an accident that changes them forever. And we can all relate to a period of significant change in our lives. There's something about bringing a baby into the equation which instantly makes every scenario emotionally charged, because suddenly it's not just your life on the line or a decision you're making just for yourself as an adult. You're having to protect and make decisions for this tiny little thing that's come into this family. And then you're facing this, grave threat of extinction. And at the center of it is this new life that you want to fight for. And there was something so beautiful about always having that, and to have this birth in it, which felt really radical. And to film was an amazing, amazing couple of weeks. I loved that the most. And then to have this baby with us all the time felt like anything that was threatening became triply threatening, because you had this vulnerable thing that we had to take care of. And that to me felt like, wow, how cool in a superhero movie to have these stakes that we all know that these superheroes have to face that are of epic proportions. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they're all trying to protect this baby. And that felt like, I don't think any human could not relate to that. I was so grateful for this presence of this baby because it helps ground you as an actor because you're not just thinking about yourself. And like, how do I protect myself and my family and the world? Which feels like quite a, as an actor, it's a real challenge to try and understand what being responsible for that many people would be like at this group of people these superheroes are. But suddenly to have this baby and for that to be under threat, it makes me emotional thinking about it because we just had it there to act and play with because suddenly this terrifying space entity wanted the baby inside of me, and that felt like harrowing and very personal, very intimate and very disturbing. And it felt so cool that in this story that we wanted to go to those places that felt like, I don't know, I hoped that the audience would care even more about the fate of this group of people.
And how does Uncle Johnny feel about Franklin? Actor Joseph Quinn, who plays Johnny Storm, says he had to adapt.
I think with any family, a baby brings new life into it, doesn't it? And I think what we see characters that we're being introduced to, and yet the audience are familiar with. So it doesn't condescend the audience or spoon feed them these characters. Hopefully, you are taken in by these characters initially, and then you're able to see them adapt to a new life in there. And seeing characters adapt to things is far more, from a dramaturgical perspective, is infinitely more interesting. And you get to watch people deal with what it's like. Johnny's no longer the youngest anymore. Ben has his own feelings, I think, about whether he can have kids and, whatever that's raising for him. And then you see these two brilliant, talented, superhero characters wrestle with what it means to be a parent. And then Franklin, it's not just a baby, it's a pretty powerful little baby there. So, welcome to the family, Franklin.
One of the greatest threats to Franklin is Galactus. Pedro Pascal explains why he loves the juxtaposition of having Galactus against Franklin.
What happens in our movie and our primary villain coming after this new member of the family, I think, can symbolize what any parent's worst fear would be. And I love the juxtaposition of something so large and visually intimidating and powerful and coming up against something so small and vulnerable and innocent. Just the image of little Franklin being under the gaze of Galactus is just this, it kind of takes your breath away at the thought of anything that you love being under that kind of threat, which I think is just brilliant. It's visually brilliant, number one, and narratively engaging, to say the least.
And how does Big Bad Galactus fit into this story? Actor Ralph Ineson, who plays the cosmic entity, discusses his role.
Galactus and Shalabai in The Silver Surfer, his herald, become aware of intelligent life somewhere in the universe, in the cosmos. They're alerted to something happens, and Galactus feeds off sentient life, intelligent life forms. So he eats the planets and absorbs the nutrients which come from this advanced thought. So his herald alerts him, or they're alerted that there is something going on this planet. So they head to it, and the herald goes to Earth and informs them that Galactus is coming. And so the Fantastic Four then come to greet Galactus. And yes, he is the threat. I don't think he's evil. I don't think it's not a sense of good and evil. It's a sense of necessity. He's kind of a cosmic gardener. He's keeping the balance in the universe, and the feelings or the thoughts of mortals on whatever planet he's eating are not really of any consequence to it. The only reason he's interested in these particular mortals is because they've got Franklin Richards. But I don't think that makes him evil. It just makes him a force of nature. He is what he is.
The Silver Surfer, played by Julia Garner, is also crucial to the first family story.
I played the herald of Galactus, the messenger. I work for Galactus. And it's revealed later that I'm Shalabai, and that's in the film. There's a lot of suppressed emotion that the Silver Surfer has been going through forever, in a way. She made the ultimate sacrifice because that was the best thing for her family and her planet. But after a while, when something is so suppressed and pressed down, and then you don't acknowledge it, and then something's kind of off, and then it gets like a light shines on it. It's like a Pandora's box in a way. And I thought that was really, in terms of even as an actor, I thought that was just really interesting to play. And I love that about the Silver Surfer because it's fun to act. The entrance of the Silver Surfer is in Times Square, 300 people. And that was also my entrance on set. So that was also my first day. I was doing this whole message, this long message that I was giving the Fantastic Four, 30 feet in the air. And that was not only the Silver Surfer's first day of meeting the Fantastic Four, but that was also my first day, which is actually very cool that that got to be my first day. Luckily, it worked out. And I think the thing with the Silver Surfer, it feels that Shalabal, she wants to connect, but she doesn't really know how. She almost forgot how. And I think with Johnny and Joseph Quinn, who's amazing, and he's an incredible actor, and he's just such a sweetheart. Johnny's really trying to connect with her, and I think she doesn't know how to react, but I think she also likes it because she hasn't felt that in a long time.
So what is Johnny Storm's connection to the Silver Surfer? Joseph Quinn says their connection runs deep.
I think that the Silver Surfer represents quite a few things to Johnny. I think he sees an ally or an infinity with this person, this alien, which is pretty rare for him. I think what she represents, her power, her ability to cross the atmosphere and travel through space, which he's unable to do. I think he just kind of is in admiration for that. And then he gets a bit obsessed with her.
And how could we forget Mole Man? Actor Paul Walter Hauser shares what drew him to the role.
What attracted me to want to do the Fantastic Four was very much the fact that I had never been asked to do anything in the comic book superhero type world. So that was already exciting. Matt Shakman gave me one of my first jobs in Hollywood. So that was also what drew me to it. And then the character of Harvey Elder, aka the Mole Man, is a complex character. His backstory being the scientist who had brilliance and had intellect, but was kind of shunned for his appearance or for his ideas. And then he goes and finds solace and community underground with these monster mutant type people. And then, of course, uses them for evil and not good. So that's a complex character. And in this movie, I think there's a human side to him that we show. And I get to kind of live in that gray area of both aiding the Fantastic Four, but also having been a recent foe of theirs as well. There's more going on there.
Actor Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who plays Ben Grimm, has really enjoyed joining the MCU.
It's been a good experience. I think I'm grateful for having spent so many months working on Fantastic Four and then down for a couple of months and then back. So I feel close to Ben and I feel close to Fantastic Four and I feel warm. I have to say I kind of miss being with Pedro and Joe and Vanessa. I go through a little bit of withdrawal.
Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps is playing now only in theaters.
While the Fantastic Four are saving their world from Galactus on the big screen, exciting things are happening in the Kingdom of Wakanda.
That's right, Victoria. Marvel Animation's Eyes of Wakanda is available to stream now on Disney+. And fellow official Marvel podcast host Evan Narcisse had a chance to speak with showrunner Todd Harris about what viewers can expect.
I'm joined by Marvel Animation's Eyes of Wakanda showrunner Todd Harris. Thanks so much for chatting with us. Todd, let's talk about your background as a creator. What's your creative journey been like professionally?
I kind of found my way in through the movies. I have a long track record of being an action guy and doing story development and visual development and storyboarding and things of that nature, from everything from God of War, video games, all the way up to the John Wick franchise. And that journey led me into Marvel. And Marvel has been just a great home because ultimately I kind of have a cross section between kung fu movies, animation, and comic books that all kind of landed in the right space that Marvel was trying to occupy. So their headspace and my headspace kind of aligned. And fortunately, they aligned to bring us Eyes of Wakanda.
Nice. Let's talk about your Marvel fandom for a little bit. Who were your favorite comic creators?
I like the classic stuff, like the John Buscema's, and Alan Davis was, for me, just the king of character-driven storytelling and like nuanced action. And then like the new wave of guys like from Gaijin Studio, which really brought a cinematic kind of flavor to comic books that resonated with me in my formative years as an up-and-coming artist.
So, it sounds like you are a perfect person to take on Eyes of Wakanda in the role of showrunner. Tell us a little bit about what it means to be a showrunner on this show specifically, and how did you kind of set the overarching vision for the stories that you guys are trying to tell?
I was asked to work on Avengers Infinity War. But in the midst of that, because I was working on some Black Panther stuff inside the movie, and we were chatting about it. And, when you're a comic book person, all these worlds kind of bounce around inside your head. So with that kind of idea bouncing around in my head, I had this idea for the alternative historical account of what the world looked like if these Wakandans kind of were sprinkled into key points in history. So that's a very wordy version of the hyped fanboy pitch I gave to Kevin. And then, ironically enough, I was called over to help out on Black Panther. And I was talking to Ryan about it and pitched it to him because I don't know if they were prepared for how big Black Panther was going to be, but I knew. And the one thing you can do is, especially with the Black Panther, is you make your hero greater by making his support fantastic. So if all these guys are unbeatable, what's their boss like? And so the idea was to prop up what it was, not only to be like, if Wakandans are dope, what's the dopest Wakandan look like? So that was the kind of premise of just showing how dope the Black Panther is through the place he was raised.
One of the things that's great about Wakanda as a fictional setting within the Marvel Universe is that it allows you to tap into history in a much deeper way, right? It has a historical depth that lets you tell stories across almost all of human history. Can you talk about how you guys played with that breadth of history across the series?
Well, that's kind of the beauty of the Marvel landscape, is that it's very rooted in reality. You put a little bit of fantasy, but context to the real world is what makes it resonate with the audience. And history is just an open tapestry of opportunity. And who do we bounce around and find inside history that's also Marvel related? So it was like, it wasn't so much what can we do? It's like, what should we do first? And there was just certain points where underappreciated historical points, this gave us the opportunity to bring light. And also to exposed historical flashpoints in history that people don't have much perspective on. So seeing characters that you go, oh, I didn't know that was there.
We know Wakanda history stretches back to the Bronze Age. Where will we be starting the journey? Does it happen chronologically? And what time periods will we kind of move through?
All these stories kind of start during the fall of the Bronze Age. So the first episode happens in Crete, and another aspect of the show is to show how interconnected the world was, even in ancient history. Ancient Greece, ancient Crete, ancient Rome, Ethiopia, India, there was commerce, trade. There would be all this interaction between cultures. If you were around the Mediterranean and you were from parts of Africa, you make your way because you would get goods from certain places. So I wanted to also make that a major backdrop to what we're seeing. We start this out, it's like, wow, the world is every bit as integrated as it is now. It's just old.
Let's talk about the characters. Who are our crew of Wakandan warriors? Can you just walk us through the cast of the show?
So I've been referring to the show as anthology adjacent. The anthologiness of it is because Wakanda is old. And so you can have the same story go through centuries, because unlike most societies that are 200 years old or 2,000 years old, there's a different perspective in the world for a 10,000-year-old society. So they have the patience to know that they will start a job that they know they won't be alive to see finished, but they have so much belief in the integrity of who they are that they know it will be done. That's why you can kind of hopscotch, where you can have this thread of the same plot going through centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. And this is the story of a very specific arm of the Hattusarase. And if you have that kind of ability, the main thing is they want to, like, I always picture Wakandans as being people who are saddened because they want to find friends in the world, but also, too, they're fearful because they don't want to bring in the chaos of the world. And so it's that fine line. And so just protecting that and seeing all the different ways of how they do that throughout history. What does that look like? What do those institutions become as they get more entrenched? So you'll see the Hattusarase evolve, you'll see the tactics evolve, you'll see the technology evolve. And so that's also a subplot of the story of seeing how Wakanda evolves through time.
So let's dig into the themes a little bit. Like, what was important for you to explore thematically, and how does that come out through the characters and the settings?
Well, you want to deepen Wakanda. because you only get so much time in the movies. There's a plot you got to take care of in a movie. So what we wanted to do was show Wakandans in different light. So taking the opportunities to lean into what type of Wakandans we run into and how they get about, still in a very Wakanda way, but with a different type of flavor.
Let's switch to talking about the craft of the show, and the animation styles in particular. Is this being animated 2D, traditional hand-drawn style, 3D? Let's talk about the visual approach that you're implementing in Eyes of Wakanda.
The approach mostly is to invoke hand-painted and hand-drawn feel. It's a 3D animated show with 2D elements, but it has a very painterly quality. We have a couple of North Stars in terms of our look we were heading for. One is a 20th century illustrator named Dean Cornwell, who's a favorite artist of mine. And then another artist named Ernie Barnes, and he's kind of African-American art royalty as well. So that kind of painterly quality with the exaggeration and the proportions that like Ernie Barnes brings. And also Charles Bibbs is another brilliant artist who had like a lot of energy in his drawings. So just kind of evoking a lot of that kind of stuff and celebrating the kind of hand quality of the animated style that we're going for and getting the lighting, that was very important to us.
What are you most excited for fans to see when the show premieres?
I just want them to enjoy it. It was a long time in the making. And it was a show that basically supported my love for the Black Panther and Wakanda. I want people to go be entertained. And I also want people to come back and go, wow, I didn't know that, because that's the kind of historical aspect of it. And when you get into comic books, you might inadvertently get an interest in physics because they work it in there. Or you might inadvertently get an interest in Norse or Greek or Egyptian mythology because they work it in there. That's kind of the beauty of it. So hopefully people come away going, I want to watch that again. And I didn't know that.
That's great. Well, Todd, it was so great speaking with you today. Thanks again for joining us. Marvel Animation's Eyes of Wakanda is now streaming only on Disney+.
The release of Marvel Animation's Eyes of Wakanda has us thinking about one of Wakanda's greatest defenders. Released in 2018, Marvel Studios' Black Panther follows Prince T'Challa on his journey to becoming King of Wakanda following his father's death. Played by the late Chadwick Boseman, T'Challa must also protect the people of Wakanda from Killmonger, a challenger who wants the throne for himself and threatens the kingdom's peaceful existence. Eventually, T'Challa defeats Killmonger and in the aftermath, stands before the United Nations making a bold declaration about the future of Wakanda.
My name is King T'Challa, son of King T'Chaka. I am the sovereign ruler of the nation of Wakanda. And for the first time in our history, we will be sharing our knowledge and resources with the outside world. Wakanda will no longer watch from the shadows. We cannot. We must not. We will work to be an example of how we as brothers and sisters on this earth should treat each other. Now more than ever, the illusions of division threaten our very existence. We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. We must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe.
Black Panther is now streaming only on Disney+.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we'll hear from Eyes of Wakanda executive producer Ryan Coogler.
So it was always a dream of mine to make an animated show like this, and I think we really blew the doors off of this one.
That's it for this episode. If you haven't already, make sure to leave us a review wherever you're listening. It helps other Marvel fans find the show.
That's right. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode.
This episode was hosted by Sade Spence and me, Victoria Ying, featuring Evan Narciss.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores.
With help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Zachary Goldberg.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.